Turbocharged 51 over here. I hope you're having a splendid day wherever you are in the world. And guys, we are back with the Motorsport Lounge, back for another Formula One podcast. This time probably with the most dramatic starting Grand Prix of the season so far. But before we do that, welcome back Super Boosted. How are you today?
I'm doing good. A bit more sleep. More sleep.
I think we all need more sleep. But in any case, guys, we've got an announcement, unfortunately, that a lot of people do not know, that like aren't hardcore F1 fans. I know a few of you guys that watch the podcast actually wouldn't be up to date with this. So Boosted, please give us the very disappointing announcement about Sebastian Vettel.
After Sebastian Vettel finishing in P2, he got disqualified because there's a rule that you need more than a litre of fuel to spare to give to the FIA, and they didn't have a litre of fuel.
Yes, guys, so basically we're going to talk about that in the talking points of the podcast. But yeah, basically Vettel got disqualified for having too little amount of fuel in his car, but we'll talk about that a little bit later and explain it a bit better. But first of all, let's run through the race results after Vettel's disqualification. So obviously, insane race. Esteban Ocon won the Grand Prix for Alpine, the first time since 2008 that Renault/Alpine have won a Grand Prix. So Ocon had banked a full 25 points. Lewis Hamilton came in P2 for Mercedes, banking 18 points, 2.7 seconds behind Ocon. Carlos Sainz was in P3 for Ferrari. He banked 15 points. Fernando Alonso in the second Alpine was 4th, banking 12 points. Pierre Gasly was in P5 for AlphaTauri. He banked 11 points, getting fastest lap as well as his 10. So followed closely behind by his teammate Yuki Tsunoda in P6, also for AlphaTauri, banking 8 points. Then, probably the team of the weekend, we had the two Williams drivers, Nicholas Latifi and George Russell in P7 and P8. So they gained a total of 10 points for the Constructors' Championships. We'll talk about it a bit later, but literally George was in tears after the race. A very emotional moment for Russell and Latifi. Beautiful. In P9 was Max Verstappen for Red Bull, only gaining 2 points, but he drove with basically half a car. Kimi Raikkonen takes the final point in P10 for Alfa Romeo Racing. In P11, you've got Daniel Ricciardo for McLaren. P12 is Mick Schumacher for Haas, had a fantastic weekend himself. Antonio Giovinazzi was the final finisher of this race in P13, 1 lap down from Ocon. And then all your retirements, well, disqualifications and retirements were Sebastian Vettel, Nikita Mazepin, Lando Norris, Valtteri Bottas, Sergio Perez, Charles Leclerc, and Lance Stroll. So a total of 6 retirements and 1 disqualification, only 13 finishes. It was a bit chaotic, wouldn't you say, Boosted?
Yeah, with that first lap crash, it was really. First of all, I didn't even expect when I
Today's Boosted Words is not working with him.
No, I can't. Today, when I looked, because I recorded the race, and when I started the recording, I didn't realize it's gonna rain that day.
Oh, so you had a nice surprise.
Yeah, it's like, oh. I didn't know about this part. No.
Yeah. But guys, before we actually start with the talking points, I've added 2 things with the podcast just to bring you guys up to date, because obviously after this weekend, it is now the summer break. We are off for 3 weeks. So this is the actual Formula One Constructors Championship. Boosted, quickly run us through the Constructors.
Okay. In 10th place, Haas with 0 points. 9th place, Alfa Romeo, dropping down 1 place after this weekend with 3 points. 8th place, Williams with 10 points, well-deserved points. 7th place, Aston Martin with 48 points. 6th place, AlphaTauri with 68 points. In 5th place, Alpine with 77 points.
Your favorite name?
That's a dumb name. McLaren in 4th place with 163 points. Actually tied
with Ferrari.
With Ferrari in 3rd place with also 163 points. Red Bull dropped down to 2nd place with 291 points, and Mercedes jumped up with 303 points to first.
Yes, so guys, that is the actual real-life live Constructors Championship, not our inner little Motorsport Lounge Constructors Championship. We'll get to that a bit later. And now the actual Drivers Championship, as we head in towards the summer break. Nikita Mazepin is still occupying P20 on 0 points, just behind his teammate Mick Schumacher, who's also still on 0. Guys, basically how it works, if two drivers are on the same points when it comes to the Drivers Championship, they basically go off who has had the best average result over the season, and thus far Schumacher has performed a lot better than Mazepin, so that's why he's ahead of Nikita. In 18th you've got Antonio Giovinazzi on 1 singular point. Kimi Raikkonen, after getting P10 this weekend, moves up to P17 with 2 World Championship points. George Russell is now in P16 on 4 championship points. Nicholas Latifi P15 on 6 points. Lance Stroll and Yuki Tsunoda are actually tied for P13 and 14 on 18 points in the Drivers' Championship. P12 is Sebastian Vettel on 30 points. P11 now after his fantastic weekend alongside his teammate Ocon. Fernando Alonso is in P11 on 38 points. Ocon has moved up to P10 now on 39 points, only 1 singular point ahead of Alonso. Ricciardo is in P9 on 50 points, actually tied with Pierre Gasly of AlphaTauri in 8th position on 50 points, but obviously it's kind of clear that Gasly has been the better driver throughout this season. Charles Leclerc is occupying P7 for Scuderia Ferrari on 80 points. His teammate Carlos Sainz is now up in P6 ahead of him on 83 points, thanks to Leclerc's DNF this weekend. In P5, you've got Sergio Perez on 104 points. Valtteri Bottas in P4 on 108 points. Lando Norris for McLaren is still in P3 for McLaren on 113 points, with Max Verstappen moving down to P2 on 187 points, and Lewis Hamilton being the leader of the Drivers' Championship heading into the summer break on 195 points. Now it's time for the talking points, guys, and the first one is going to be a quick one, but even though he's a little bit hated in the F1 community, that crash in the pit lane with Raikkonen was really unfortunate for Nikita Mazepin. That was Alfa Romeo's mistake. So I actually felt bad for Mazepin, because if you looked at what good a race Schumacher had, and Mazepin was on pace with Schumi the entire weekend for the first time. Practice, qualifying, and race pace for those first few laps, Mazepin was on pace with Schumi.
Yeah, it was an unfortunate accident, but with these cars, it was the team Alfa Romeo's fault, because with these cars you can't even look behind you unless you use the mirrors. You are strapped down, your head barely moves.
Exactly.
So it's unfortunate, but he still finished P14.
The one race he does not finish, he finishes in P14. How does that even work?
P4, yeah, he's P14.
Yeah, I'll quickly go up with the results. Mazepin P15, sorry, P15.
Sorry, P15. I don't know what is his best results for the season so far, but this is one of them. And he didn't even finish it.
He didn't even make it to lap 10.
Yeah.
But in any case, moving on towards the next topic, guys, staying with Haas, and I mean, what an absolutely brilliant weekend from Mick Schumacher. It's very disappointing that Mick didn't get points, but this shows the amount of talent that Schumacher has. He battled, yes, Verstappen was driving a wounded car, but the Red Bull was still quicker. We know how slow the Haas is. He battled Verstappen, he battled Ricciardo, he battled so many of the drivers this weekend. He didn't even make it easy for Hamilton to get past him.
No.
Schumacher showed why he's the 2020 Formula 2 world champion.
And with that, those was, I think, a potential world champion still.
Oh yes, most definitely.
Because his driving style is very close to his dad.
Oh yes, he's a Schumacher out and out.
And that just brought me so much excitement, because, as you said, unfortunately he didn't get points, but I promise you, at one point or either, a lot of people wished he did get points.
I think a lot of people would have wanted him to get points instead of Nicholas Latifi, the second Williams driver. Obviously, Russell is the fan favorite. I've always loved Latifi. I've loved him since his F2 days. But when you look at the amount of fans that Schumi has, I think a lot of people would have preferred Schumi in Latifi's place.
But Schumacher
finished P12.
Finished P12. That is still...
He's ahead of Giovinazzi.
That's still very good. With the driving a horse. That shows his talent, everything. That's just.
Don't worry, we'll look at the results on your cell phone, we'll look at the talking points on my cell phone. Sorry guys, it's a little bit awkward at this stage.
Just brilliant driving, and I hope this just continues on, because the car's not gonna win any races any soon now this year.
We never know about next season.
Unless everyone crashes.
Unless he's like, Mazepin, take out the rest of the grid. Okay.
19 people didn't finish the race, and he's the only one finishing the race. No?
Well, sorry, just off topic. Lewis on the restart, being the only car on the grid. That was the most weird thing I've ever seen, ever since I've started watching Formula One.
I saw a meme about that. It's like Lewis, the only driver on the starting grid. That's good. Now we know he can't hit anyone after Silverstone.
Oh my word!
I think a lot of people are still
a lot of people still feel it was Lewis's fault, that mistake, but we're not here to talk about the British Grand Prix. We're here to talk about the Hungarian Grand Prix. And just the last thing before we move on from the Schumi point of view, the thing that stood out for me this weekend about Schumacher, just like Tsunoda and Mazepin, he's a rookie.
Yeah.
And he took it to the best of the sport. He took it to Verstappen, he took it to Hamilton, he took it to Gasly, he even took it to Ricciardo. Ricciardo took something, I think, post-race, the results showed, I think it took Ricciardo more than 20 laps to get past Schumacher. The only reason Ricciardo passed him was because he went for an undercut in the pit stops. He couldn't get past Schumi on track, and that's coming from a rookie.
Yeah, and I know some people will say, okay, yeah, Hungary is a hard place to overtake, and that's not a lie.
But it's still not Monaco.
It's still not Monaco, but it's still a hard place to overtake. But that also just shows Schumacher defended very well. He knew where to put the car and everything. Because you could defend, so it's hard to overtake, but if you're going against someone that's not good, you will overtake easily.
Yes. And Schumi proved this weekend that he does deserve to be in Formula One.
Yes.
I mean, referring to Demi, one of the ladies on our Motorsport Lounge group, when Schumi and Mazepin got their contracts late last year, after we heard that Magnussen and Grosjean were going to leave Formula One, me and Demi, even though Schumi won the 2020 Formula 2 World Championship, I'm going to be honest, I was on board with this. We didn't believe with any stretch of the mind that Schumi was ready for Formula One. We obviously knew Mazepin didn't deserve to be there. But we also were like, Schumi needs a few more years of development. And after this weekend in Hungary, Schumi has really proven me wrong. I mean, he hasn't had the chance yet this season to battle against other drivers because the Haas is just so slow. The only time we saw him battle was with Latifi back at Portimao.
Yeah.
And I think in Barcelona for a bit. But this weekend, he went up against the best in the worst car, and he gave them a real tough time. And that to me was fantastic to see. He's got a lot of his dad in him, and me being a big Schumacher fan, not as bad as Alonso and Vettel, but being a big Schumi fan, it's wonderful to see.
Yeah, that for me, where you said, I remember that where you and Demi said he's not ready for Formula One. I was the one who actually believed he is.
Yeah, you were the one person that disagreed.
Yeah, because he's winning the championship and his racecraft was really so good. And now I'm glad with this race you saw my point.
Yes,
so
yes.
It's like, I told you.
Look, I can't speak for Demi, but from my perspective, Schumi has completely shown me that he's ready to be in Formula One. But let's move on before we talk about Schumacher the rest of the podcast towards the team of, well, one of the two teams of the weekend, because it's not just Williams, but outstanding performance from Williams this weekend, and not just from Russell. Usually when we talk about Williams, we talk about Russell, but Nicholas Latifi, I wouldn't say he was the better driver, but he was totally matching Russell this weekend, except for qualifying. When it came to the race, but Russell was out in Q1. No, screw that. He matched him in quali because Latifi was in 18th and Russell was out in P16, and there wasn't a big difference between the two.
Yeah.
The Williams just didn't suit Hungary, and
Qualifying.
Well, qualifying. Clearly they did something wonderful for the race, but also there were 7 retirements. Not the point. Well, 6 retirements, 1 DQ. Latifi was on such good race pace. He was matching Russell every lap, and I honestly hope Latifi is finally on that verge of being with Russell, because I honestly believe Latifi deserves to be in Formula 1. It's not his fault that Williams is the only team that wanted him. I really believe that Canadian deserves to be in Formula 1, and he's starting to show it now.
I think with his good results this weekend, yes, he really did good, and with him finishing ahead of Russell, yes, it's sounding like I'm being mean to Russell, but I think Latifi needed this to prove
absolutely,
he is worthy, because every time Russell's out qualifying everything, and I think it was with Russell. I'm trying to say two sentences at one. My point is, Latifi, he did brilliant. He avoided the massive crash.
Yes, he did.
And he preserved the tires and did everything correct. There's no other way to say it. He did brilliant. And yes, I know Russell said if they need to prioritize.
I just wanted to come to that.
Prioritize Latifi's pit strategy, and that just shows me Russell has that respect.
Yes.
And that's very important for me, because that shows me he doesn't want to pull the team to himself. He acknowledges that Latifi is there.
Yes, and Russell has said in past interviews before, because he has been asked, especially throughout this season, with all these young F2 drivers that really are talented and can be in Formula 1, that the interviewers have asked Russell, do you feel your teammate deserves to be in Formula 1? And Russell has never backlashed on Latifi. He's always just spoke. Oh, excuse me, that was a bit of a hiccup. He's always just sung praise to Latifi. And I mean, like you said, Russell said mid-race to the team, if you guys need to compromise my strategy to make sure that Nicholas gets points, do it. Well, not Nicholas, he calls him Nicky. That's actually very funny to me. But he's like, he told the team directly, if you need to compromise my entire race, my strategy, to make sure that Nicky gets points, do it. And that just shows me what a team player Russell is. And you know one thing, once again, Russell had a fantastic weekend. But one thing that we talked about just before we started the podcast with the whole thing, Russell is the exact guy that Mercedes needs now. Yeah. There's a clear divide in Mercedes between Hamilton and Bottas. There's obviously favoritism towards Hamilton. Nobody can go against that. And if you look at the type of what's the word I'm looking for? If you look at the type of situation that Russell brings into a team, the type of spirit he brings into a team, that's exactly what Mercedes needs now. But Mercedes refused to put Russell and Hamilton in the same cars because, with all due respect to Lewis Hamilton, I think they know Russell is going to do to Hamilton what Rosberg did. And the thing is, people know that Russell can beat Hamilton.
I think not completely what Rosberg did, because Rosberg went into a mental game against Hamilton. I think Russell will just purely go, like Bottas has been intending this whole time, purely go for outpacing Hamilton. And yes. I think with Russell learning so much and being still a younger driver, I think he will find stuff that where Bottas will not.
Once again, no disrespect towards Bottas, but Russell is quicker than Bottas. We saw it last year in the Mercedes. Russell sat in Hamilton's seat. He was extremely uncomfortable. He had to squeeze his feet into Hamilton's shoes, which were, I think, 2 sizes smaller than his own feet. And he was behind Bottas in qualifying. I think it was 300ths of a second, so that's 0.03. And race pace wise, Bottas couldn't touch Russell, and that was only on one outing. And yes, obviously Valtteri didn't have the best weekend that weekend in Bahrain, but Russell, if you look at their performances from the start of their careers, Russell is the more promising driver. And honestly, like I told you before the podcast, Russell, in my opinion, needs to get out of the Mercedes program and just get a team that wants him. Because yes, Toto Wolff is his manager, but they are wasting very big potential years for Russell's career.
Yeah, that's for me. They're wasting a lot of potential, and that's why I hope at the end of the year, and as well as next year, I can't say for fact for next year, but I hope for the end of this year, Red Bull win the constructors, because with this signing a game for Bottas, that Red Bull winning the constructors will just be that speck on their hands. I told you.
No. Look, when it comes to team, freaking hell, my English is terrible today.
Mine is worse.
When it comes to managing drivers throughout the teams, I still feel Red Bull is the worst. But also, I just feel Toto Wolff and Mercedes are being unfair towards Russell, because that's a very talented young man, and they are wasting precious time for him. But let's not hammer on about that. Let's go into the next topic: sloppy pit lane tactics from Alfa Romeo. Now, sloppy pit lane calls from Alfa Romeo. Not just the Raikkonen-Mazepin incident. Giovinazzi was also released dangerously into the path of another driver in the race. Both the Alfa Romeo drivers got 10-second penalties thanks to their team not properly releasing them into the pit lane. And obviously now with Williams, with having this fantastic weekend, and Haas actually not looking too bad this weekend, Alfa Romeo can't afford these mistakes if they want 8th in the Constructors' Championship.
I think that's what, with them knowing how good Williams did, I think that's why they were pushing so hard, because that's plainly just trying to push limits where they're not supposed to push. And
exactly.
Yeah, it's very unsafe, so I hope they find more space and speed or whatever they need to find in other areas, because that's unsafe. And I think the team after this weekend learned well that they're not supposed to do that.
Oh no, very true. And I mean, even though, like I said, there's a very little support for Nikita Mazepin, but they cost Mazepin his race with the whole Raikkonen-Mazepin incident. And Mazepin was running, I think, 2 or 3 positions behind Schumacher, who was in the points. Mazepin was just outside the points. And with Mazepin really trying to prove people wrong and trying to establish himself in Formula One, I feel Alfa Romeo robbed Mazepin of a very good opportunity this weekend.
Yeah, that with that they robbed him, and there's not much they got the penalty and everything, but with the, I don't want to say we need to keep drilling on it, but I think Alfa Romeo learned their lesson, and we hope they just learn it for the
foreseeable future.
But because it was unfortunate for Mazepin.
His right front suspension arms broke.
That broke, but Kimi can be lucky because his car didn't break.
Yeah, he didn't even receive floor damage.
Maybe next time the Alfa Romeo will break.
Yes.
So let's hope for Alfa Romeo and other teams they will not do it again. But I understand in the heat of the moment they were just trying to push wherever they can.
Yeah, they were trying just to gain on Williams. And also, I mean, Schumacher was in the points for a lot of the race. So Alfa Romeo knew if stuff really went wrong for them, they would have been lost in the Constructors' Championship.
Yeah, I think that's why they were pushing so hard when they did. And it's I want to say, yeah, it's bad, but I can promise you, if you in that type of mindset where they were, a lot of people will do the same.
Oh no, absolutely. It's not like, look, this isn't something that happens every week, well, every race weekend. So it's just this one, the fact that they cost both their drivers basically to get into the points because both got 10-second stop and go penalties. That is just the part to me. Alfa Romeo ruined not just Mazepin's race, but their own chance to get points this weekend.
Well, they got points.
Well, okay, yeah, Kimi got 10. But it could have been a lot more. I mean,
yeah.
Because basically Kimi and Giovinazzi could have been ahead of Verstappen, and that's 3 points. that's a lot more than one in the position they are in, being at the back of the grid. That's gold worth to them. So it's a really weird situation, but hopefully Alfa Romeo have learned their lesson, and I truly believe they have. Now, moving on to the next topic. Now, I named this topic Stroll very unfortunate, but after looking at all the onboard replays, Stroll made exactly the same mistake as Bottas and was just on the brakes way too late.
Yeah, and I saw the onboard replay. I know you reacted to another car.
The brake broke earlier. I think the car that broke ahead of him, I think it was Sainz. No, it was somebody ahead of him, but not the point.
It was a car that broke earlier, and he wanted to go to the inside, and he didn't, because like the commentator said, no driver knew the braking points and everything, because through the whole weekend it didn't rain. It was only Sunday, so you're so used to, and you build that type of muscle memory when you to brake for the dry setup.
Yes. And
now it's wet. So I understand it's an easy mistake to make, but it's still unfortunate, and it cost him, it cost Stroll, Leclerc,
and they
and
spat
Ricardo race. But with this race, it was just crazy.
Yeah, it was chaos at the start. But the thing is, obviously I'm a Ferrari fan, and I'm not holding anything against Stroll because he hit Leclerc, but Leclerc would have been where Ocon and Vettel was, because Leclerc was on the inside, the track was open, he would have been behind Hamilton, just like basically back at Silverstone. Leclerc put himself in the position to get out in P2 with all the chaos behind him, and if it wasn't for Stroll, Bottas, Norris, Perez, and who did Perez hit? It was Lando hit Verstappen. Those four drivers, Verstappen, Bottas, Norris, and Perez, wouldn't have come close to hitting Leclerc or Ricardo. But because Stroll just locked up and went diving down the inside, he literally went on the grass.
Yeah, he even went on the grass, and in that desperation to brake, and that's when you know he really broke.
Yeah, broke.
I'm away, but it broke too late.
No. Look, I'm not going to be too hard on Stroll, because I mean even Bottas made the same mistake. But in those conditions, I understand it's muscle memory, but you really need to be on your toes in those conditions, because all the drivers knew, okay, we can't brake past the 100-meter board like we did in qualifying or in practice. We need to hit the brakes a little bit earlier, and Stroll and Bottas just yeeted it into the first corner, and it cost a lot of drivers this weekend. I know that Bottas and Stroll have been given 5 place grid penalties for the next Grand Prix in Spa, so they will both start 5 positions back from where they qualified, which to a degree is fair, but I feel they needed to be given a bigger slap on the wrist.
Especially for Bottas, but I think 5 place grid penalties still also. Okay, yeah, it's easy to overtake at Spa with that heaven-long straight.
Through Eau Rouge and down the Camel Straight.
It's still Bottas and Stroll will still need to get through the pack.
Yes.
No matter where they qualified, they know.
And especially Aston Martin now being on the back foot, especially because Vettel was disqualified. AlphaTauri, I mean, in the Constructors' Championship, we to just quickly go to the Constructors. I mean, look at the gap now between Aston Martin and Alpine. They are 20 points behind AlphaTauri and a further 29 points behind Alpine, who are now in P5. And those are the 3 teams that are battling of a P5 to P7 in the Constructors. So this is going to hit Aston Martin hard, because obviously they lost the 18 points that Vettel got for P2 with his disqualification, and Stroll didn't finish the race. So Aston Martin have got a lot of work to do for the rest of the season, and Alpine are just getting quicker every weekend, and AlphaTauri are getting back to that consistent selves that they were at the beginning of the year. So a lot of work to do for Aston Martin, but let's just see what happened. Sticking with Aston Martin, and even though he was disqualified, which I still feel was an absolutely pathetic way to end Vettel's weekend, but fantastic racing from Sebastian Vettel. And we'll get to Ocon now, but Vettel tried everything in his being to get past Ocon and the Alpine, and there were 2 opportunities where Vettel just couldn't get past. Ocon just shoved him, well, they didn't shove him off track, but basically closed the door, and Vettel was pressurizing Ocon literally from the restart of that race till the checkered flag.
Yeah, Vettel drove basically his heart out, and that was very good for me. I actually hoped a little bit Vettel got the win.
I think a lot of people hope that Vettel will get the win.
Because I think he deserves it a lot, but Ocon also deserves it. But I think everyone was so excited for the battles, because how the battles were. Alonso versus Hamilton, where we did more.
It was Ocon and Vettel. You had Verstappen and Schumacher. There was
Ricardo and Schumacher.
Yeah, Ricardo and Schumacher.
So there was at the track that were not
where there's very little overtakes.
Very little overtakes, but very hard to overtake. You need to set up the overtake so hard, good, or you need to be so aggressive.
Yes.
And that just brought me excitement, because I enjoy the one driver closing the door or going for that little gaps in hoping that brings me excitement. And Vettel, it was one of them that he just pushed and he didn't stop, and it was lap after lap after lap, just continuous. I promise you, the fans that were there, I promise you, people's calves would have been so sore.
Oh yeah,
they didn't sit.
Yeah, it was stand up, sit,
and jump,
no,
and scream.
But I mean, even coming back towards, I'm just skipping a topic, but the Vettel and Ocon battle. I mean, I think it was somewhere within the 40s when it comes to the laps. Vettel did force Ocon. It was just after they both pitted. And I think Aston Martin cost Vettel the race due to that slow pit stop.
Yeah.
Because Vettel had a phenomenal outlap, but with that extra second in the stop, that is what cost him the win. Not the point. Give credit where credit is due. But Vettel even forced Ocon into a mistake heading into T1 at a stage, just like Hamilton did with Alonso, where Ocon locked up. But Vettel just couldn't get the drive coming out of T1. As they headed into, I mean, it's basically like Austria. The second corner is just a little bit of a swerve, and then you go into T3, that downhill hairpin. Vettel was alongside Ocon, but Ocon forced him to the outside. And when they went through the hairpin, Ocon just closed the door, heading into that little fourth kink right-hander, and Vettel could do nothing. But basically, Ocon said post-race that and there was literally reports by Formula 1 themselves about this. Ocon said nothing against Sebastian Vettel, but battling in the midfield is more stressful than battling at the front. It's because in the midfield, he needs to worry about 3-4 drivers in front and behind him.
Yeah.
At the front, all he had to focus on was Vettel behind him and just keeping the car on track, because the outside of the track was so treacherous because the curbs and everything were damp. So for about the first half of the race. But Ocon managed the pressure from Vettel fantastically, and it's the first time since Ocon has a win back in GP3 in 2015. It's the first time Ocon has tasted victory champagne since 2015. It's been 6 years since Ocon has won a race.
That's a really long time. And that just shows you, even though you don't win as much, some of these drivers, and I want to actually say all of these drivers, have the talent to win.
Oh yes. No, I don't think there is. I would question Nikita Mazepin.
Okay, 19 drivers.
But again, looking at all the other drivers on the grid, and I mean, I'm even taking people into consideration like Giovinazzi, which gets a lot of hate on social media. But if you put almost any of the drivers in either the Red Bull or the Mercedes, and you take away all this pressure from a very big teammate like Verstappen or Hamilton, any of these drivers can win a race.
Yes.
And like I said to Janco in last week's podcast about the British Grand Prix, and I told Jonny the same thing at the beginning of the year. This has been one of the best years ever to start watching Formula 1, to begin becoming a Formula 1 fan, because the racing is absolutely exceptional.
Yeah, that just let me think about how next year is gonna be, because the car is gonna look so much different.
Next year's cars are very very sweet on the eye. They might not be as fast, but the cars look fantastic.
They look. It for me, it's like they took the cars they have now. It's like, okay, how can we make it that it looks like, okay, the car was sent from the future?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, they took the modern cars and be like, okay, how can we make this look like a spaceship? Let's make everything sleek. And it's just like, that demo they had at Silverstone was so beautiful. The next year's cars, to me personally, are going to be more beautiful than these year's cars, even though they're going to be slower, which I feel is a step backwards for Formula 1. But I'll talk about that in a different podcast.
Well, for a couple of years, I think if you...
It depends on
with
how
our technology...
they might one day be quicker again, but still, I'm very much looking forward, especially for teams like Alfa Romeo with their beautiful liveries, Aston Martin, Alpha Tauri, Alpine with that type of car next year, even Mercedes and Ferrari.
Yeah, no, well, I just thought about...
What?
They have less downforce. What are those cars' top speeds gonna be?
Ooh, I can't wait for the Italian Grand Prix next year.
Okay, we're going off topic.
Okay.
We're going off topic.
But let's quickly talk about Vettel's disqualification. So, guys, I'm going to read you the exact statement from the stewards why Vettel was disqualified from this race. The race stewards were unable to take the required amount of fuel for sampling following the race. Now, what that sampling is for, I am not 100% sure. What I think it is about is like making sure that the driver didn't overfuel or underfuel the car to gain a certain advantage in the race. But that is just me guessing. They don't tell us why there needs to be at least 1 liter of sampling fuel at the end of the race. But
if I have to guess, maybe it's to test the fuel, because let's say you can actually mix the type of fuel because let's say, yeah, the engine is supposed to be on a certain setting, but if you can let the fuel have a little bit more explosiveness or gain more power, then they will do.
Very true, very true.
Because I think all the teams bring their own type of fuel.
I'm actually not sure about that. I will
we'll
actually
have to go research.
Yes, we'll have to go research that, because I honestly don't know.
That's my idea. They test the fuel if it's the standard legal amount, well, legal stuff that needs to be in the fuel.
Legal components within the fuel. So yeah, I honestly I don't know, but honestly I understand why the rule is there. I honestly do. But to disqualify Vettel from having the best race of his season, I mean, the other race he had was back at Baku, which also was, but to me this was a better performance from Sebastian, and to steal nearly a win from Vettel. I mean, he crossed the line, what was that? I took it away, but I think he crossed the line 1.7 seconds behind Ocon. And obviously he backed off on the final lap, but in that final stint, Vettel was never further back than 1.5 seconds from Ocon. He was constantly pressurizing Ocon. And to me, it's such a low blow, not just towards Aston Martin, but to Vettel as well, to take 18 points away from him, because we already mentioned it. Aston Martin have now got a big gap to try and catch up to Alpha Tauri and Alpine.
Yeah, I think it won't be as a big a blow on Vettel himself. Yeah, he didn't get his P2, but I think it's a more bigger blow on the team themselves, because they didn't tell Vettel we need that amount of fuel.
They didn't tell Vettel to save
fuel, and it's a sad situation, but I think Vettel will still go away from this weekend with a big smile. And at the end of it, he drank Hamilton's champagne. He drank Hamilton's winning second place champagne, where Hamilton's supposed to, but he didn't.
Look, one thing I'm grateful for, one small thing I'm grateful for, because obviously you know how much I love Vettel, is the fact that Sainz got a podium for Ferrari. So that's Sainz's second podium for the season after Monaco. So that is the only thing that I'm really grateful for. But other than that, Vettel deserved that podium. But guys, leave your opinions down in the comments down below about this whole situation. Do you agree with the ruling? Do you not agree with it? Do you think they should change the ruling a bit just to make it easier for the drivers? Because I mean, trying to put myself in Vettel's shoes, you've got a race win that you don't know when you're going to get this opportunity again to chase for the race win. If I was the team, if I was the team or Vettel himself, obviously the only thing that's going through your mind is push like hell.
Yeah,
and so to have your entire weekend ruined post race by something as silly as this. Yeah, look, once again, I'd say I understand why the ruling is there. I understand there's a lot of stuff that fuel gets used for, and there's a lot of stuff that they need to test. Like, it might not just even be for the car's weight or everything. Like you say, for the different components in the fuel, there's an endless list for what they can use those samples for. But yeah, to take somebody to disqualify them, that's a bit tough.
Okay, so now we're going to go from a team and Vettel being disqualifying to a very good teammate.
Yes, and what I said in the topic was, guys, Alonso was the perfect teammate and all-round a damn good driver this weekend. Me personally, I feel Alonso was the driver of the weekend.
I think he got that from...
He got driver of the day. He got driver of the day. But if you look at, that can be jippered by the fans. Look back at the Sakir Grand Prix, the Bahrain Grand Prix last year with the Grosjean's crash. He was out by T3 and he still got driver of the day. Obviously, I understand it's because he nearly died, but the driver of the day vote can be jippered by the fans due to people being biased. If you look at on-track performance, nobody was better than Alonso. And on the week where he turned 40 years old, he puts in a banger of a performance like that.
40 years old, and he just showed Hamilton how to drive.
Yeah, how to defend. And it's not just this. Looking back at Austria, the battle with Russell, and where's the other track where he defended so exceptionally well from somebody? I can't remember now. Back at Spain, when his tire started dying off, he was at the lead of that top 10 pack. He defended from, it was Vettel, Stroll, Russell, Gasly, and there was another car, and Raikkonen. He held the back for something like 15 laps before he had to pit, and he got overtaken by Stroll and Vettel. Where's the other race where Alonso defended so absolutely brilliantly? Back at Portugal, that immense final 10 lap push.
Yeah.
The main thing I want to come to, forget about the defending, but the main thing I want to come to is people, especially with Raikkonen as well, people judge them so quickly due to their age. But Alonso, even in qualifying, Alonso was stupidly quick. And he's 40 years old, but I don't feel he's lost a step. I feel he's still the same Alonso.
Yeah, I think when he got used to the car, he really picked up the pace, and after this weekend, a lot of people's eyes opened to Alonso because how he defended. And I think Hamilton, with that radio where he said no, he's doing that type of high speed.
Oh, the moving at that high speed, it's so dangerous, man.
It was so. I think Hamilton was just. He knew. He's like Alonso is like Verstappen. If they decide to move at high speed and block you, they are gonna move.
Yeah, they are gonna move.
They are not afraid. They are not afraid to do what they need to do.
They're not afraid to play the rubbing his racing card. They're not afraid to do that.
And that just excites me because that's the type of racing we like.
Yes.
Because for Hamilton, yes, he backed down.
Alonso, yes, in that moment where Hamilton complained, yes, they did touch, but it was a minor touch. And the place where Lewis's left front tire touched was Alonso was just behind his right front, on his right side barge board. So it wasn't hefty contact. It's not like Hamilton didn't even go. On 3 laps were like that, where Hamilton, coming out of T4, heading up the hill, Hamilton has got the overspeed because the Mercedes power unit is an absolute...
And my question is, why do you want to go for that corner on the outside? You know you're going to lose.
But he did get the move done on 2 other drivers going around the outside of that corner. So Hamilton had the confidence to go around the outside. He just didn't pick up the thought about, I'm going against a former 2-time world champion in Alonso.
Yeah, he's like, okay, I did that against other drivers, but it's like, it's not going to happen with Alonso.
I think he did it. I know he did it to Schumacher, was the one.
Well,
and the other driver he did it to, I think it was Gasly or Tsunoda. And I think actually it was Tsunoda, who's a little bit more punchy than Gasly when it comes to overtaking. and Tsunoda did try and force Hamilton wide, and Hamilton just kept his foot in. So Hamilton definitely had the confidence up until that point to go for the move around the outside, because that corner you don't want to pinch someone on the inside. It's better to go around the outside. I mean, even on the F1 game, it's easier to go around the outside.
It's safer to go around the outside.
Because you've got runoff. On the inside, you've got grass and then barrier.
And then death.
Yes, but Alonso, and I mean, even not just talking about Alonso, did you see how badly Sainz tried to take that position back from Hamilton? Going through that downhill hairpin in T3, trying to go around the outside of Hamilton, knowing he's got all the tyres. He raced his heart out, Carlos. So, once again, the two Spaniards, exceptional performance, but Alonso especially. That battle with Hamilton was, to me, and I said this with the Austrian Grand Prix, the battle of the season for me was the Russell v Alonso battle, because they gave each other so much respect and room and still had a cracker of a battle, a cold, hard racing. But this battle with Hamilton to me was just that teeny bit better, and it's not because I'm not a Lewis Hamilton fan, it's just because Alonso made that Alpine as wide as the track.
Yeah.
So, and Hamilton, I think the amount of frustration Hamilton had, look, I get his team radio is being memed, but I mean, put yourself in Hamilton's shoes. He was the only driver on the restart, went all the way down to last place, had to fight his way back, and at the opportunity where he knows, okay, I can actually win this race, he gets stuck behind Alonso, and Alonso's just like, you need to give it your all if you want to come past me.
Yeah, but it's with the restarts, it was not the other people's fault. He tried to do a lap on the wrong tires.
Yeah, true. But the thing is, I think what Mercedes told Lewis there, I think Mercedes knew there were going to be a few drivers that pit. I don't think Mercedes thought every single driver except Hamilton would pit. So I wouldn't put that mistake on either Mercedes or on Hamilton. It was just unfortunate in the circumstance because the track was still a little bit damp. But you know,
okay,
let bygones be bygones.
Yeah.
But just to come to the end of it, fantastic weekend from Fernando Alonso, and he deserved driver of the day. Heading towards AlphaTauri, and let's just talk about both drivers. Look, first thing I want to mention, Gasly was caught on the outside with the first corner incident.
Yeah.
Bottas hit Leclerc. Bottas hit Norris. Norris went into Verstappen, and then obviously, Norris went into Verstappen, and Bottas went into Perez.
Yeah.
Gasly was on the outside. Gasly nearly turned into Perez, saw Perez got hit, straightened up his steering wheel, and literally went to the barrier, and then went back on track. Gasly to come back and finish P5. Beautiful recovery, typical Gasly fashion, and let's not forget about Yuki Tsunoda. Tsunoda finishing P6 behind Gasly. Yes, the team did ask them to do a driver stop, but Gasly was on a quicker two-stop like Hamilton. Fantastic weekend from AlphaTauri, and both those drivers were absolutely on fire this weekend.
Yeah, I think both of them, for the team, they did really well, and that's the performance we want from Tsunoda. It's to be with Gasly when it's needed.
Yes.
And I think it was just a very good race. And Gasly, like you said, coming back with a two-stop, and you know, if you're a mid-team or midfield team, it's hard to do that two-stop and coming back because your car is a little bit slower or as fast as the other teams around you.
And I mean, look what happened to AlphaTauri when we look at the second weekend at the Red Bull Ring in Austria. AlphaTauri, we talked about it in that podcast. AlphaTauri was the only team on the entire grid that went for a two-stop, and Gasly still managed point, but it didn't work out because they were supposed to be up there with the two Ferraris and the second McLaren of Ricciardo. And yes, AlphaTauri cost himself there, but look how it paid off for them this weekend. Gasly was the only car, along with Hamilton, doing a two-stop. Well, there was like 8 pit stops per driver thanks to the red flag and all the craziness with the wet weather and everything. But when you look at the actual tyres, going from inters to slicks, there was supposed to be just one stop after that, and Gasly did 2, and he still managed P5.
Yeah, for me personally, I think Hungary, yes, you can do a one-stop, but the two-stop is just so fast.
Yes, because you've got Hungary is a track where, because it's like Monaco, it's a very high downforce track. You need grip, and the track, unfortunately, is a very slippery surface. So the fresher your tires are, the more grip you have, the better you can push. And if you're in clean air, because it's a downforce track, you're going to be blisteringly quick. I mean, look back at 2019. Verstappen led the way. Hamilton pitted. He was 22, 23 seconds behind. Caught him within 15 laps.
Yeah.
That's just Hungary is a track. The more grip you have, the better you're going to be, as long as you are not within traffic.
So I know what to do in my F1 game. I'm going for 2-stop no matter what. But yeah, just overall, really good performance from AlphaTauri, and the one driver that didn't do as good as we two hoped, and I think he himself hoped to do, was Daniel Ricciardo.
Literally, the topic what I wrote was Daniel Ricciardo, what WTF, because yes, I understand Ricciardo's spin was not his fault. Obviously, Stroll hit Leclerc bumped Ricciardo, and Ricciardo spun. I get that's not his fault. But Ricciardo had no damage. And Ricciardo couldn't get past Mick Schumacher without an undercut, and he still couldn't get past Raikkonen, who had a 10-second bloody penalty. Raikkonen caught up to Ricciardo, overtook him on a little bit fresher tyres, but obviously the Alfa Romeo is a lot harder on its tyres. It's not as well developed as the McLaren. And at the end of the race, Ricciardo was half a second a lap quicker. He caught him back up, couldn't overtake him. In a race where you have an Alpine winning, an Aston Martin on track finishing P2 and P5, the two Alpha Tauris, all these cars that are slower than you, and you are the only car left because your teammate was taken out. As far as I'm concerned, besides Hamilton, Ricciardo should have been the one to win this race. Leclerc was out, Norris was out, both the Red Bulls were out, including Bottas as well. The least Ricciardo should have gotten was a podium, and Ricciardo didn't have a sniff of points anywhere in that race. And one of the you guys are going to see at the end of the episode, at the end of the podcast, we're doing a summer break prediction, which is worth 10 points for each of the Motorsport Lounge members. Actually, I think Jonny predicted that Ricciardo's going to leave McLaren with the summer break, and that wouldn't even surprise me, because Ricciardo has been the driver that has not adapted like any of the other drivers who have either come back.
He's the only driver that didn't adapt to the new car.
Yes, Tsunoda has adapted, he's a rookie. Vettel has adapted to the Aston. Sainz has adapted to the Ferrari, who's there still. Alonso has adapted to the Alpine. Schumacher and Mazepin have adapted to the Haas. Mazepin seems like he's on pace with Schumi.
He's done spinning.
Yeah, when he's done spinning. Why Ricciardo, a proven race winner, to a lot of people, a for sure world champion for the future, why is Ricciardo struggling so much? That is the $1 million question.
Yeah, it's like because they've built a new chassis for him. So, and I don't know where he can find the pace, but he desperately needs to find the pace, because it will cost the constructors the drivers.
And the drivers, Norris is in P3, splitting the Red Bulls and the Mercedes. Ricciardo is in P9, more than half the points behind Lando. Lando's on 113 World Drivers' Championship points. Ricciardo's on 50. And we've seen what Norris can do in that car this year. And yes, I know it's also down to the driver, but Norris does not nearly have the experience of Ricciardo. Ricciardo has been racing since 2011, 2012, round about there. Ricciardo has got so much experience, and Lando is absolutely whipping Ricciardo.
Let's say Ricciardo was at the same amount of points as as Leclerc. That's he's in 7th place.
Yes.
Just giving him.
They would have been. Oh my word! That means that they would have been solidly ahead of Ferrari in the constructors.
Miles ahead of Ferrari in the constructors, but
and that's not even equal points to Lando. That's just matching the two Ferraris, because Leclerc's on 80 in P7 and Sainz in P6 on 83. If he just matches the Ferraris, McLaren have got P3 in the constructors.
Yeah, that's he needs to go and find the pace, because it's going to cost McLaren 3rd place, and we know with the good motivation, everything going on at Ferrari Ferrari's not going to stop.
No, they're not going to slow down, not at all. And it feels to me every weekend, Sainz and Leclerc are just that little bit quicker, little bit quicker, little bit quicker. And I mean, look where Norris qualified because it was Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas, Perez. Norris was P5, Leclerc, Gasly P6, and Leclerc was P7. Ricciardo qualified, I think, in P10, if I'm not mistaken. I can't exactly remember, but he was still something like 4 tenths behind Lando. And just Ricciardo, I honestly, it wouldn't even surprise me if he left McLaren at the end of the summer break, because Ricciardo is known for these insane moves. So yeah, it's just it's just very it's sad to me, because I like Daniel Ricciardo. I'm speechless. I'm also gutted for Ricciardo, because I can understand this is mentally a very hard thing for him, but Ricciardo needs to find something. He needs to find something.
Basically Ricciardo needs to
actually Gasly was P5 in qualifying. Sorry guys, Gasly P5, Norris P6, Leclerc P7. Excuse me, I just swapped Norris and Gasly.
But in all, Ricciardo needed to be in the top 10, and I don't know, we've never been in that type of position where you're trying your best and it's not showing.
Yeah, true.
And we like Daniel Ricciardo. He's a fun and nice guy, but he needs to find something.
Yes, he has to.
And I know we just keep saying need faster. It's easier said than done, but but somehow, some way,
something has to turn for Ricciardo. Look, we don't know what it is, and once again, we understand it's not the easiest thing being a Formula 1 driver. And Ricciardo has had some good performances this year. It's not that everything has been bad. I mean, if you look back at Spain, where he finished ahead of Lando was P8, Ricciardo finished P6 behind Perez.
Yeah.
Had a good weekend there. He had a fantastic weekend at Silverstone 2 weeks ago with in the sprint race and the main race, finishing just behind Lando. So Ricciardo is almost there, but he can't have weekends like this. One of the Ferraris were out, and a lot of the main players were out, and he couldn't get past one of the Alfa Romeos, and that was Raikkonen. Something has to start clicking for Ricciardo, because unfortunately at this stage, to come towards the punchline, he's costing McLaren P3 in the constructors. End of story.
Yeah, they are tied now for P3 now.
Yeah, they're tied with Ferrari on 163 points. So Ricciardo has to find something, because at this stage Lando is carrying the team almost completely.
Yeah, because this moment, we're going now to the next topic, talking about Sainz. Sainz talks about, he said, I think he knows they're not going to catch up with Red Bull or Ferrari this year in the constructors.
Red Bull or Mercedes?
Red Bull or Mercedes this year in constructors, but I think Ferrari just are welcoming Sainz so good.
Oh yes.
And Sainz and Leclerc are going to push so hard next year.
Oh yes.
Because both of them want to win constructors for Ferrari.
Yes, I mean.